Why so many artists are leftists? Why I'm asking this question? Because, first of all, I am one. Second of all, most artists I know are leftists. I guess I don't know any right wing artists. And I think I want to show you some examples throughout history and maybe explain that from my personal point of view, because recently I've been thinking about it, and yeah, it's pretty interesting. Maybe everything is fucking political nowadays. I'm gonna be like giving like the big names for examples, and it's like really fascinating thing that a lot of artists are kind of on the left side of the political compass. Unless you're a fucking Dali, because Dali was crazy. Like, when he was young, he identified as communist, anti-monarchist, and anti-clerical, which is, yeah, pretty normal stuff for most of us nowadays. But later, he became kind of more apolitical. When he was apolitical, he refused to publicly shit on fascism, which is pretty interesting considering that in like 1948 he publicly supported Franco's regime. And of course, he announced his return to Catholic faith, which is pretty interesting because, like, you have no idea how big of a friends were fascist regimes and Nazis with Catholic Church. It's mind blowing. And in 1968, when Franco finally died, he even said that there should be no democracy anymore. And Spain should become absolute monarchy. And he even said, I'm against freedom, I am for the Holy Inquisition. And at the end, in 1981, he said that he was always anarchist and a monarchist. Yeah, Dali in that particular case was just plainly crazy. And you probably have an uncle like this that sits on those weird groups on Facebook. When he was young, he was for the unions and shit, and now he's full blown authoritarian. Because for some reason that happened to boomers. Like, how you go from the lefties and the hippies taking acid, free, stop war and shit, and go to full on blown authoritarian. Like, how the fuck does that happen? Picasso, on the other hand, he was literally on the other side of the spectrum, I guess, to fascism, because he was full-blown communist. Like, he even got some awards from Stalin and Lenin and shit like that. But he also refused wars and fighting in them, which is, I kind of understand you, because, yeah, artists don't really belong in army, though. I don't think that. We just should, touch the grass and fucking paint and shit. At the end, Picasso, on the other hand, god damn, that rhymed. He said that communism was more of a sentimental thing rather than political views of his, because I think his political views might have been just like socialist and shit. Claude Monet, he also was avoiding wars, so he left France just to do that, just to avoid going to war, which is big W, man. Because if he would have died, then fuck no, he's a great artist. Come on. But despite fleeing from the country, he wasn't that political. Andy Warhol, for example, you know him because he was like full blown consumerism. But if you understand his background, you understand why he was like that, because he grew up super poor and all he wanted Coca-Cola once a day, because he and his family couldn't afford to do that. That's why he like really never spoke about like the past. Although he was friends with a bunch of US presidents, some even used him as a puppet just to gain votes from youngsters. But he resisted on being apolitical because politicians intimidated him. And he also said something in the lines of actors and politicians, they can change faces fast or some shit like that. And some artists just wanted to whore out. Who can blame them? Like, I love to do that. Everyone loves to do that. It's 2023. We can stop slut shaming. But for example, Da Vinci, he was caught with a male prostitute. He was even charged with sodomy, I think, which is absolutely funny. And you know who also like male prostitutes? Michelangelo. I mean, you cannot convince me he wasn't gay. Just look at the women he created. And he also struck an interesting deal with a church when he was painting Sixteen Chapel. Every time you will look at it, I want you to remember this. And specifically, if you go there and think about it, just type that down in the comments, because this is gonna blow your fucking socks off. Because the church had to get him a helper, and they got this 13-year-old boy. In the contract, it was saying that he could have this servant for a whole week, and he even closed the door shut, and they were leaving the food under the doors. Nobody was allowed in the meantime. Just fucking connect the dots, alright? That's in the contract, and it's so amazingly funny, because who is better in providing underage boys than Catholic Church? Pretty amazing stuff, I tell ya. Rafael Santi, bruh, STD. He was like 37 years old when he died. Even his official cause of death is excessive lovemaking. Yeah, excessive lovemaking. Shit. So yeah, and I'm not even touching on drugs on this one, because that would be too much of a research. If you want me to do an episode on that, you can also let me know. And you're like, I don't know, halfway through or some shit, you could just fucking like the video. Okay, so now it's time to what I'm thinking about this whole situation. Why we all are leaning left, more or less, or try to be apolitical. With apolitical thing, it's understandable because you don't want to be used by certain outlets as their propaganda and shit. So I could understand that. But at the end of the day, most of us just want to have absolute freedom, because it's the freedom that gives us power of creation. If we can freely roam around and just create art, take pictures, draw shit, and whatever you are creating, it allows us to create really good thing. Under authoritarian regimes, art isn't really free because you cannot do something. There are so bizarre examples of that. Like, for example, whole avant-garde in Russia, because Stalin didn't like it and he thought it's bourgeoisie type of art, and he transformed all of the art into socialist realism, which kind of fucking sucked, because killing so many variations and movements in art is devastating. And these things, in the old times, there were certain traditions. You couldn't paint anything else besides the fucking Bible, or you were a fucking heretic. So we don't like those strains on us. And we want equality for everyone. A lot of us are queer people, and we just want the freedoms. And only like social democracy is like the shit for us, you know? Because we can do what we want, and we can create what we want, because there's no censorship. And I think conservatism, as the name suggests, it meant to preserve something. And it wants to preserve traditions, it wants to listen to old fucking books that were written 2000 years ago. And for most of us, every week is like just completely new fucking experience, or completely new cascade of fucking ideas all over the place, and we want that. If you think about it, it's pretty obvious why most artists lean left, because the left, I'm not speaking about communism, authoritarian left, fuck it, but just lefties, you know, woke people and queer people that are advocating for do whatever the fuck you want. You wanna take drugs? Sure. You wanna get an abortion? Sure. No fucking problem. They don't see the problem in any of those things. We just want freedoms, and freedoms gives us the best performance in art. So if you're free, you're best goddamn artist on earth. Alright? And that's the point. And I know there are some traditional artists, and there are some believers artists, and there are probably some authoritarian artists as well. We are all over the place, but the vast majority of us are on the green side of the spectrum, and that's fucking alright. But what do you think about this situation? Why artists are mostly leaning left? You can leave the comments, you can argue in the comments, you can do whatever you want in the comments. I'm not your mom, and if you liked this video, you might consider subscribing and checking out my other videos, especially if you don't agree with me, because if you're a conservative, then